If you believe you can, you are halfway there. Someone told me this a while ago, and it really stuck with me. So the podcast has nothing to do with that little quote, but I'm looking at the little card that I picked for today, and that's what it said. So I believe I can, and I know that I'm halfway there. To you, my friends and family, to everybody that's listening and tuning in, thank you for choosing to tune in and to listen to another podcast. I think this podcast is going to be to the point, just as usual, short, sweet, and right into it. I think that it's very important that we understand how past stories and future conditions, most importantly conditions, really put a ceiling to how far we can go and prevent us from being and finding our best self. So, if this is something that sounds quite interesting to you, then stick around, listen to the rest of the podcast. If you'd like to find a different topic, then go ahead and choose from the gallery. I am quite proud of myself. This is season 3, episode 30, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been fun for the past couple years recording these podcasts, and it's actually really lovely to see the reaction of people or from people. It's been nothing but positive. So thank you so much for tuning in and for choosing to listen to this podcast. Without further ado, let's roll the show. I wanted to sit down and talk to you about a discussion, a small talk, that I think should be more relevant, more present in our life. I think that the more we understand the stories we are creating are just that, just stories, and the more we understand the conditions we create for life itself, for our life, then the better guidance we have moving forward. I also think that, I think a lot of things, but I want to take the time to tell you that you can be true to yourself without any explanation or without any excuses. And it's very important that you understand that, because I have been on both sides of the spectrum where I felt like for me to be true to myself, I had to give an explanation or I had to make an excuse. So you need neither, really. Just be true to yourself and be true to who you really are. You can also live without any conditions or without any doubt. And I know that sounds quite strange or maybe dangerous, because doubt sometimes can be a good thing. But as long as your motivation, your inspiration, and your love for what you're doing is greater than the doubt, then you'll move forward. Because doubt only stops you from living, and conditions only put you in a box, so you're not necessarily living. So with that being said, the first part of the podcast will talk about past stories, how we are prisoner of past stories, and how they create future conditions for us. I'm sure that's a relevant and interesting topic to you, because what comes really first in my head when I talk about past stories and future conditions is relationships. We go through several, let's say, unagreeable or unsuccessful relationships, and so we create these experiences, these past stories, and we bring them on to the next relationship. We are eager to look for, those things that did not work out, and as you know, what you look for, you attract. I also think that we need to understand every time we create or live by our past stories that we are not in collaboration with life itself. It's a very beautiful thing to say, and I'm stealing it here from Don Miguel Ruiz, but life is a collaboration. And if you don't see it that way, then I want you to take a pause and think of it a little bit deeper. Everything you do is a collaboration with somebody else, something else, or just yourself. I think it's important to understand that when we are constantly referencing old experiences, we are not living in the present moment. I'll give you an example. You may be headed to the beach this weekend, and last time around you got really, really sunburned or something negative happened, so you're thinking that this time around will be different. Or you might have met somebody on a first date and it was just a terrible date, so the second time you meet them, you have that expectation of it being terrible already. I think that when we live with these expectations, these stories, and these conditions, we're not really allowing things to take their course. I think that having a fresh outlook every single time and really kind of erasing doubt and really just allowing life to collaborate with us, all beautiful things can happen, just as much as all not so beautiful things can happen. And you see how I'm choosing my words here very carefully, because I'm saying not so beautiful. I think life is a collaboration, and I think that we need to start acting like the collaborators we are. We regard future opportunities because of our past experiences, and furthermore, we create similar stories which we believe enough that take us away from being a collaborator and put us in the seat of being a hesitator. We hesitate with a friendship, we hesitate with relationship, we hesitate with a job, we hesitate with just literally down to the smallest little thing, up to eating a certain fruit or food, or just doing anything. We become hesitators when we allow ourselves to live by our past stories and the conditions that they've created for our future. Again, life is a collaboration. It's not a consequence. So we have to be really careful how we approach our life and how we approach our day and how we approach our months and our years as well. Obviously, however you flourish is because of how much you nurture yourself today. So be kind to yourself and nurture yourself in the best way possible so you can flourish in the best way possible as well. If we put our will into action without any expectations, without any past stories, we then only allow life to unfold in its magical ways. And I know that you know what I mean. I think it's very important that our past stories, future conditions, and present expectations are put aside. I think they're the main cause of unease in our life, and I think that we have to understand that. I think that conditions and stories and expectations is what worry us the most. It's what makes us more anxious every single time. It's what makes us being misunderstood. It's what cuts out the communication that should be as clear as a bright day in the sunny desert. Do you hear what I'm saying? I do. When we choose to see things as they are, there is a new foundation which we can stand on and we can grow on. But if we choose to see things as they had been, or things as we have an expectation of them to be, then we're not seeing reality. So there is no foundation, because that curtain, that veil can be lifted really quickly, and then that creates a lot of disappointment. I hope that makes sense. And I also want to insert something in here which Don Miguel Ruiz said, and that is, stop treating others as the main characters of your personal story. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's important because that is what also creates a lot of unease in our life. We treat others like they're the most important thing in our life, and in reality, we are the most important thing in our life. And we put a lot of emphasis on the stories we create for others, and sometimes they don't live by our stories, they live by their own. They have their own things to deal with as well, so we have to respect people's stories as much as they have to respect ours. But it's really beautiful when all the stories are shared and everybody meets you as you are and you meet them as they are. Past stories such as, I can't live without someone, or I want someone to change in order for me to be with them, etc., etc., they don't allow us to experience life as it is. And they only create friction. At least in my life, I've observed that every time I have a story or an expectation or a condition of somebody, and they don't meet that condition, usually friction is the product of it. I think loving others and appreciating others only if they meet in certain condition isn't necessarily love. It's just an exam. It's like if they pass our exam, if they get an A on the exam that we give them, then only then and then we'll give them our love, we'll give them our affection, we'll give them our attention. Life shouldn't be that way. There's more to life than just testing and putting conditions onto others. The second part of the podcast, I want to talk about conditions and living without conditions, which to me, when I first wrote this, it seemed quite bizarre, right? Because we are so used to conditions. We put conditions on almost everything. At first glance, it seems like if we don't have conditions, then we don't have standards, right? Because we're mixing both of them. We think that having standards is what's important in life, and we're only allowing certain people under our own standards to meet us. Well, I'm not going to argue with the wording or however you see things. I only want to let you know that you can live your life that way, and that's perfectly fine. I just would feel like we have to shine a light on a different kind of life, on a life where you just let yourself be guided by the love poured out of you and not by how much love is being poured in or what's been returned. So whenever you set conditions, it's usually, what am I getting? Are you meeting my condition? And obviously the other person has a set of conditions too. So we're not focusing on how much we're giving. We're focusing on how much we're getting. If only a life can be a life without conditions, then we wouldn't be so exhausted like we're in a boot camp or something. It wouldn't be so tiring of meeting other people and trying out relationships and friendships. It would be a collaboration with friends, with family, with everybody around you. Life would be a little bit easier, but that change, that shift starts with us. We can't expect others to be the way that we are until we show them the way that we are. How much time do you spend loving and caring for others, even if they mess up? How much time do you spend judging or nagging them when they do mess up? How do you want to live your life moving forward? Those are all really, really important questions, because we attract who we are and not what we want. You know, the law of attraction thing where it's, I'm going to attract what I want in my life, works exactly the opposite way. I'm going to attract who I am in my life. I think if we spend more time in understanding that, then we'll see our life come from or move from a hesitator to a collaborator stage. Or everything around you is more of a collaboration. It's a dance. It's a beautiful dance. So if we live a life without conditions, I think something magical happens. What I talked about in the beginning of the podcast, which is whenever we have a condition, we set the roof on a certain potential experience, and we rarely have somebody exceed that. But if we don't have any conditions, don't have any boxes to put people in, or don't have any criteria of how people could be, they can obviously exceed all of those things and bring something more magical that we couldn't even imagine in the first place. Because people's potential is much higher sometimes than they themselves believe in. So when every time you have a condition on them, you're not allowing their fullest potential to blossom. And it's the same in your life too. Whenever you have these conditions for yourself, you're not allowing your life to fully blossom to the level that it could go. Something unimaginably beautiful. Something so vastly different from where you thought you could be. And how many times you've had situations in your life where you exceeded your expectations? Well, maybe you didn't have an expectation, but you surprised yourself that you even went further than you experienced or you expected. I don't know if that makes sense. Living without conditions means that you're living without any preset beliefs. And you may believe someone or something is making you unhappy, but in reality, your belief is the thing that's making you unhappy. It's not them. Because repeated thoughts become engraved beliefs, and those beliefs then become stories, become conditions. And so the less we take ourselves serious, the less we believe on the things that we go on telling ourselves, the better. There's a field of possibility, whether we believe it or not. And I think that it's important that we take the time to work on those engraved beliefs from our childhood or from our early teens or 20s to now to our 40s and so on. Do you catch my drift? I hope you do, because I think this is very important. Only fear really is born out of conditions, nothing else, not love. Because if somebody doesn't meet my condition, just the condition itself that needs to be met is born out of nothing more but love. And even if people say, I will love you if you do this, that's not done out of love. Think about it. I think it's important to take the time today, not tomorrow, today, to think about yourself and think about what you want from life. What kind of life do you want to live? Not what everybody else will do in my life or how they'll satisfy my needs and so forth. No. Who are you? What kind of life do you want to live? Are you living as if you're the master calling the shots or the servant? If you're the master calling the shots, then whatever everybody else does is their own business. Keep in mind that nobody needs to obey your calls and your shots. You can be true to yourself without explanation or excuses. You can live a beautiful life without conditions and doubts. Let go of the stories that no longer serve you and be open to a new way of living. Be free, my friends. Be free.